broke my paddle, not once, but twice. Specifically, this paddle. Here's how I did it. What you're looking at here is from the first incident, which was actually very early on in my kayaking career. I was new to kayaking at the time, and I was practicing my self-rescues just outside of where I keep my kayak. While I was practicing, I tried to practice a paddle float rescue where you slide the paddle float in the deck lines. And when I did that, I put my weight on the paddle over the water. But the problem was this here, where this connection was the pressure point on the kayak itself, because this was the end slid into the kayak. And when I put my weight on, it just entirely and completely snapped. In that incident, what I learned was slide the paddle much further through, or find a way to rescue yourself without having to use the paddle like that at all. But if you slide the paddle much further through, then you put your pressure on the actual shaft and not on the connection between the shaft and the blade. And that would resolve that. Luckily, the company that I bought the paddle from was kind enough to provide me this half of the paddle again, so I had a complete functioning paddle once more, until very recently. A month or so ago, I went out on a paddle with a couple of other people. We were practicing for the blue paddle pass, the European paddle pass system that day, and when we left shore, the first thing I noticed was that my Greenland paddle wasn't working. The clasp was broken. It was a two-piece paddle. The clasp here was broken, and the thing was just not securing at all. I could slide it back and forth and made it absolutely unusable. Now, what I've learned since then is that my Greenland paddle isn't broken. We had another one that's been broken as long as we've had it, and I accidentally grabbed that one instead of my working one that day. Luckily for me, my good Greenland paddle is still quite good. But I left the Greenland paddle on shore that day, and I took out my backup paddle, which was this one, or, well, it's a working version of this one. And when I met up with the other members of the party, one of the people had just built himself a wooden Greenland paddle. So I stowed my paddle and I borrowed his wooden Greenland paddle, and we went out for a while. But eventually we reached a spot where it was pretty rocky. He didn't want to use his nice carbon paddle, which is quite understandable. So he wanted his Greenland paddle back. So as I was taking my paddle out from under the deck line, the glue failed. The shaft and the blade are both still in perfect condition, but the glue failed and the whole thing just slid right out from the shaft and got separated. I was really lucky for two reasons there. The first, I did it while it was on my deck, and it separated while it was on my deck, and I didn't lose anything. Another person I saw on Facebook the next day had, on the same day as me, actually had theirs just fall into the water, and they were left with a single bladed paddle, unable to repair it. The second reason I was lucky is because I didn't have a repair kit, which was a terrible mistake on my part, but one of the other guys did, and in it he had some duct tape, so we were able to slide the shaft back into the blade back into the shaft, and we were able to duct tape it, and I was able to finish out the day with my paddle just duct taped together, but it worked. So lessons learned from these incidents, from the first incident, obviously, as I said, was making sure that your paddle is correctly placed if you're going to try a self-rescue with the paddle slid through the deck, so that you don't put pressure on the wrong spot. And with the second incident, the two lessons are: one, check to make sure you've got the correct paddle and that you've got the right equipment before you ever leave the house. I'm very diligent about doing that now. And number two, make sure you have a repair kit. Because if he didn't bring a repair kit and I didn't bring a repair kit, I would have been stranded and we'd have had to find a way to tow me back. Now, the same guy had a tow line, so he was well prepared. But if we weren't prepared enough, I could have easily been quite stranded on the water and essentially paddling a canoe paddle to get back to shore, which would have been slow and awkward, but doable, potentially. And so that's the result of my breaking the paddle 2 times over the course of a few years. So if you found this helpful, or you think anyone else would benefit from the information learned in this video, please hit the like button so we can spread to other people so that they can see this and hopefully avoid my mistakes. Having a repair kit with things to keep your kayak together, patch holes in the hull, some Gorilla Tape, some duct tape to fix up your paddle if it breaks, stuff like that is highly valuable, and it takes up very little space. He had a little bag, this guy had a little bag about this big in his day hatch, and it was pretty easy for me to fish out and get out when we needed it. So I have since started building a repair kit. Perhaps I'll do a video on that another time once I've actually filled it out. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see and what to put in a repair kit. And that's it for me today. Happy paddling!